I Impact Radio 102.1 FM. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Nigeria. This is the newspaper review right here on the radio station that makes sure we give you everything you need when it comes to radio experience. We are here to make sure we help you analyze all of the stories that made front page in some of the dailies that we have with us today. It is our duty to make sure you have all of the details. It is our duty for you to fully understand most of the headlines that you get to see on the front page, and to also, influence you to go, get more details for yourself on some of the stories that you might not get, fully grasp all of the explanations, because we didn't go into all of them details, because hey, we have so many things happening on the papers this morning. And one of those things that I think we will be seeing on the papers this morning, I know we will be seeing on the papers this morning, has to be with the calamity that happened in Oyo State yesterday, where allegedly over 32 lives were lost. Nobody has full details yet on actual loss of life that happened. It was a stampede for what's supposed to be some sort of assistance to young ones, the children in Oyo, Ibadan to be precise, and something gruesome happened, a stampede, which cost the lives of many children yesterday, and it is really, really sad. And may God rest the souls of those beautiful, beautiful children, and grant the parents the fortitude to bear the loss. I welcome you to the newspaper review one more time, and I tell you, you can always be part of the conversation. And how do you do so? It's as simple as ABC. You can call us up in this studio for you to tell us how you feel, what's going on in the country, or basically just to pour your mind about things around your community. And the number for you to do that at is 0700 1021 1021. But you can also do that via WhatsApp or the regular text message. And how do you do so? It is on 0907 224 5018. We're on all your social media handles. We're on Twitter, we are on Instagram, we are on TikTok at iImpact 1021 FM. We are streaming live on YouTube at iImpact 102.1 FM. So hey, you can go subscribe to our YouTube channel, click on the notification button so you can get to know whenever we are live right here in the studio. My name is Uche Okorie. Good morning and welcome to the show, and it promises to be an educative one. Okay, moving to the papers that we have this morning, we will be starting with the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian newspaper has this particular one. It says, 2025 appropriation bill, Tinubu eyes 15% inflation rate from 49.7 trillion naira budget to spend 2% on agric. Tinubu eyes 15% inflation rate from 49.7 trillion naira budget and to spend 2% on agriculture. You see that story on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper this morning, and the bill, the 2025 budget, is something that everyone is looking forward to. Everyone was looking forward to. And yes, yesterday, the president took it to the House. And we've gotten to see details of the bill, even though we had an idea of what the bill was all about. But now we fully grasp what the 2025 budget is going to be like. But 2% on agriculture, some have said, man, that's not good enough. Because we've heard the president said a couple of times that food security is a priority. We've heard the president talking about, making sure that Nigerians can feed themselves. Huge priority. Even before now, administrations before now have been looking for ways to make sure that we are self-sufficient when it comes to agriculture. But when you have a budget and only 2% is on agriculture, especially at a time when we are having so much inflation when it comes to food, because food is way, way expensive at this time. In as much as I know, it has to do with different factors, insecurity, it has to do with the economy too as well. But investing so much in agriculture goes a long way in making sure that our economy gets better, because when we are self-sufficient, it means we can feed ourselves. At some point, we might even need to export some of this agricultural produce. So when we are investing 2% of a 47 trillion, if I'm not mistaken, of a 47 trillion budget, 49 trillion, I beg your pardon, 2%, just like so many analysts and experts and average Nigerians have said, it is poor for agriculture. For a country that really, really needs to invest in agriculture, for a country that really wants to, really wants to be self-sufficient when it comes to having their own food, 2% of 49 trillion on agriculture doesn't seem like the right direction to go. Maybe more, maybe 5%, even 10%. But hey, those numbers too are huge, because you have to remember, from the side of the government, they will be thinking there are other things in the country that needs to get fixed. There is security, there's healthcare, so many things, education. So we as average Nigerians, we need to also take these particular things into cognizance, knowing that they want to get to everywhere. They want to do almost everything, and it has to fit into the budget. So when some argue that 2% is probably too small, we do understand when some also make the argument that maybe it's just the right amount to just, make sure that everything works together. But I still understand why so many persons feel 2% is really, really small. But let's see what pans out. Let's hope that even that 2% that is being, earmarked for agriculture is utilized fully, because if it is indeed utilized fully and there is real political will to make sure that that 2% works, I believe it will go a very, very long way in mitigating so many things happening in the agricultural sector of the country. You see a huge picture on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. That is the picture of the president addressing the National Assembly while he was presenting the budget. The president came back to Lagos yesterday with so many Lagosians complaining of, the traffic and all of that. But hey, the president is in town. You have to understand. Anyways, underneath that one, Dangote denies NNPCL's $1 billion support claim. I take that one more time. Dangote denies NNPCL's $1 billion support claim. Crude obligation default. It has that one on page 3. And this is just like a back and forth thingy with the NNPCL and Dangote. This is like the second auditor time the NNPCL has said something, and Dangote coming out to say something else. We saw Dangote released, there was a release statement by Dangote Refinery yesterday where it claimed that the NNPCL, well, we said we've received numerous inquiries from the media and other concerned stakeholders seeking clarification on a recent report attributed to the Nigerian Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, that their decision to secure a $1 billion backed by its crude was instrumental in supporting the Dangote refinery during liquidity challenges. They said they would like to clarify that this is a misrepresentation of the situation, as the $1 billion was just for about 5% of the investment that went into building the refinery itself. It also said it went into partnership with the NNPCL based on the recognition of their strategic position in the industry as the largest off-taker of Nigerian crude at the time. So, to them, what the NNPCL said was not factual, because they were only having about, what the NNPCL was investing was only about 5% of what it took to get the the petroleum sector to function, and they had to even do it in bits whereby it's come in terms of crude, which they will get from the NNPCL. It also will come in terms of dividends of their shares, and so they felt like if they would have to make all this, if they were going into liquidation, they wouldn't have made all this benchmarks just for the investments. They made those benchmarks because they could still handle every other thing, and so that was the back and forth between the NNPCL and the Dangote, and it just keeps churning out stories, and you get to wonder, are they in sync? The two organizations get to communicate with themselves properly? Do they understand their roles? Do they understand their own investment and how their investment works? Because this is big organizations, and for one to make claims and the other rebutes it, another time one makes claims, the other rebutes it, man, it begins to wonder as if they really are not in sync and are not sure of the contract they signed with each other. But anyways, that is Dangote and the NNPCL. Moving on to what we have on the Guardian newspaper this morning, we see NERC releases new tariff, ask Discos to downgrade customers. NERC releases new tariff, ask Discos to downgrade customers. You find that story on page 2, which is good news for many people, because they feel like, hey, you need to reduce the amount. And Nigerians will be hoping that the Discos will effectively do this as quick as possible, as quick as they do when there's an increase. So now that there's somewhat a decrease, we hope the Discos will make sure it's done as quickly as possible. Underneath it, we see FG approves zero import duty VAT on CNG LPG equipment. You find that story on page 3. Beside that one, government begins full tax waiver on drugs January. That one you see on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. Amazing news, if you ask me, because drugs is becoming way too expensive. Healthcare is really important, and you go to some pharmacy nowadays, and there are particular drugs which we know are imported into the country, and those drugs are so expensive now. I'm talking about thousands of naira. And you ask yourself, how would the average Nigerian afford this particular drug if they need it? Man, you do not want to be sick this period, I tell you. You have to do everything you can to make sure you're healthy. I know sometimes it's not easy to control, but there are little things you can do. Eat better, eat healthy, make sure your food are warmed, are cooked properly, make sure your meats are cooked properly. You do not want any sort of germs into your system. And if you have the time, exercise. You need to exercise. You do not want to fall sick. It is really expensive to be sick at this period. I tell you solemnly, for someone who has been a victim of recent, please, you do not want to fall sick. Beside that one, tax reforms. Clark urges national restructuring equitable system. I take that one more time. Clark urges national restructuring equitable system. You find that story on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Underneath it, stakeholders pick holes in Tinubu reforms, knock CBN for FX cash crisis. Business page 15 is where you see that on the Guardian newspaper this morning. State governors playing politics with minimum wage, civil servants allege. State governors playing politics with minimum wage, civil servants allege. You find that story on page 4. And finally, on the Guardian newspaper this morning, governance failure fueling violent extremism as FG commits to tackling insecurity. Who's saying this? Why is this being said? You need all of those details. You need to go look at page 3 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. And that's the much we can take for the Guardian. Moving from the Guardian newspaper straight to the Daily Trust this morning. And the Daily Trust leads with this one. Says scores of children feared dead in Ibadan Carnival stampede. Parents demand release of cops. Organizers arrested. You find this story on page 4 of the Daily Trust this morning. This is the particular story which I led with this morning, and it is really, really sad. It was organized by one of the ex queens to the to the Alafin of Oyo, the previous Alafin of Oyo, God rest his soul. And it was supposed to be for 5,000 children, and apparently it wasn't enough for them. I mean, the ex-wife of the Oni of Ife, I beg your pardon, Obaini Tongunsi, that organized it, and Queen Naomi Shilekunola, that's the name, and it is really sad. It was supposed to be for 5,000 children. It was overfilled, which resulted to the stampede, and it is really sad because first and foremost, this is something that should have been well organized. Is there enough space at the venue? What were the precautionary plans in place in case you get more than the numbers that you had in plan? Because we understand how crazy it is at this time. In Nigeria, so many people are looking for help. And when you have a situation where an NGO comes and say, okay, we're about to help 5,000 children, that is huge numbers. We're talking about huge numbers. Did you put in consideration their guardian? Because if you're bringing 5,000 children, it means many will come with guardians. Did you put in consideration the number of guardians that will come? Let's say apparently you have about 1,000 to 2,000 guardians, if not more, if not 3,000 guardians, because hey, 5,000 children. Did you put that into consideration? Did you also put into consideration that hey, it's a freebie? More than 5,000 persons will want to come. What are the security in check to make sure that these numbers do not, double up into 10,000, into 15,000? So it's really, really a sad one that happened. And I think the organizers, although like the Daily Trust has said this morning that the organizers have been arrested, I think a thorough investigation needs to be done, which I know the Nigerian police will do, and justice needs to be served, in all honesty, because yes, I understand that it was all intentions to do good. Good was what they had in mind, but at the end of the day, when you have something of such magnitude, you need to make sure there is a thorough planning. You need to make sure you go deep enough to have the government involved, because 5,000 children is huge numbers. There should have been a way whereby the government would have been involved to make sure that this free gift or this help that was supposed to be done should have been easier to do. Probably they would have provided a bigger venue for them, maybe a stadium. It's really sad. It's really, really sad, and I just hope justice is served at the end of the day. So moving on the papers, we see underneath this one a picture right here on the front page of the Daily Trust. It has the Zamfara State Governor, Dr. Dahuda Lawal, in the middle of the picture, the chairman of one of the leading banks in Nigeria. So many leading bank organizations. So in case you want to find out what they were doing and why they were together, you need to go look at Daily Trust this morning. Beside it, PDP crisis, North Central leaders meet in Abuja, insist on chairmanship. PDP crisis,
North Central leaders meet in Abuja, insist on chairmanship. You find that story on page 12 of the Daily Trust this morning. Underneath it, Total Energies, MRS, Sahara, others win 25 new oil blocks. Total Energies, MRS, Sahara, others win 25 new oil blocks. That story is on page 23 of the Daily Trust this morning. $1 billion loan, your statement misleading. Dangote replies NNPCL. You find that story on page 23 of the papers this morning. Victims cry out as FCTA demolishes 20,432 structures. Victims cry out as FCTA demolishes 20,432 structures. It has 3 riders to that story. Natives threaten to go spiritual. Lawyer seeks adequate compensation. Notices no going back on exercise. That's according to the minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike. You find that story on page 3. And man, it has been going on for days, for weeks now. And I really hope everything being done here is being done by the law, because we've had so many people come out to complain. We've had so many people say, hey, that it's unfair, that they didn't give them notices, and they are being cheated out of their homes, they are being cheated out of their lands. There were even accusations that allegedly that some lands were taken by the minister and it was, given to someone else, and different allegations. And now we've seen on the papers that over 20,000 structures have been, demolished by the FCTA, and it's huge numbers. If it's by the law, well, it is what it is. But if it is not by the law, then that is definitely an issue, because how then do you expect these people to just, survive? How do you expect them to get back their lives? Because some, this might be their only source of livelihood. Some, this is the way they have a future. And so if you take that away from them, what else do you offer them? Is there some sort of, remuneration given to them as compensation? Is there some sort of, them pushed to another land, to develop or something? Or is it just taken outrightly and they are left alone? That is, if they do not have documents to back up their ownership of the land, which is another particular thing altogether. Because in as much as we hear some of these complaints, we've heard the minister come out to say some of these people are on this land illegally, and so it needs to be properly checked if indeed these people own this land legally or illegally. And I really hope something is done. I really hope the National Assembly looks into it, and if it's indeed all following legal process, well, I hope compensations are given to these persons who really deserve those compensations. Underneath the Daily Trust this morning, we find other stories. You see, that is the nameplate of Daily Trust. 2025 budget, security gets lion's share, GOPS 14.5 trillion naira in 5 years. So much money spent on security so far, and so much more money will be spent according to the 2025 budget. But the question is, are we going to see results for all of this money spent? Are we going to go back to the time where security is 100% in Nigeria? Are we going to go back to a time where we're not scared of bandits? There was a time I never used to hear the word bandits. There were times when the word unknown gunmen never existed in our lingua. It existed wherever it existed, but it wasn't words we're using on a daily basis. There were times when there was nothing like Boko Haram. There was time where there was nothing like Lakurawa. So it's crazy that we get to see some of all these things now, and we need to go back to those times when Nigerians have total freedom to use the road freely and go to journeys and come back from journeys, where we could travel interstate without being scared for our lives, where we could travel freely in night journeys, where things were simpler. I really wish the amount of investments being invested in security will go a long way to make sure we escape the insecurity palaver we find ourselves in at the moment. Beside that story, onion hit 250,000 naira per bag. Farmers, traders blame flooding, inflation. Onions hit 250,000 naira per bag. Farmers, traders blame flooding and inflation. You find that story on page 25 of the Daily Trust this morning. I am not certain, the numbers looks a bit skewed, so hey, it is on page 20 something. So hey, in case you're interested in that story, look deep in the 20s of this page on the Daily Trust and you will find that story. On page 23, CBN restricts POS agents to 1.2 million naira daily transaction, 100,000 naira for customers. CBN restricts POS agents to 1.2 million naira daily transaction, 100,000 naira for customers. You find that story on page 33, I beg your pardon, and that's the much we can take for the Daily Trust this morning. And of course, let's go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll have the other papers that we have for this morning and get to analyze some of the stories on them. Remember, you can always be a part of the conversation if you call us up on 0700 1021 1021, or you can WhatsApp or text message us on 0907 224 5018. It is our Impact Radio 102.1 FM. It is the newspaper review. Don't go nowhere. We will be right back.
Welcome to High Impact Studios, the place where creativity meets production perfection. Need an outstanding audio production? We deliver professional jingles, engaging voiceovers, and attention-grabbing radio promos that stand out from the crowd.
If you're in the podcasting world, we've got the ideal recording space for you. Our studio is designed to ensure pristine sound, making it the perfect place to bring your podcast to life.
But we don't stop at audio. Looking for a space to film your next big project? High Impact Studios offers customizable spaces for movie sets and video production,
giving you everything you need to create stunning visuals.
Whatever your vision, High Impact Studios is here to make it a reality.
Let's create something amazing together.
Impact Radio 102.1 FM. Welcome back. It is the newspaper review. In case you are just joining us, well, we've looked at a couple of stories this morning, and yeah, we still have so many other stories to touch on the Punch newspaper this morning. But hey, you can always be a part of the conversation if you call us on 0700 1021 1021, or you can WhatsApp or text message us on 0907 224 5018. I take that one more time, 0907 224 5018. The calls for the studio is 0700 1021 1021. We are streaming live on YouTube at the moment at Impact 102.1 FM. Click on the notification button to know whenever we are live, and do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Okay, from the other papers, now we go straight to the Punch newspaper, and the Punch newspaper leads with this one: Ibadan Farm Fair tragedy, on his ex-wife, others face probe as 32 children feared killed. Page 4 and page 5 is where you will see that story. It has one particular writer to that story. UCH, 2 others confirm 16 death. Makinde vows justice, sympathizes with parents. I can't overemphasize how sad that particular story is, and man, just like the Punch has, pointed out that the governor promised, that there will be justice, and I really do hope that justice is served in this particular situation. Underneath it, you see a huge picture of the president presenting the 2025 budget to the National Assembly, and it has this rider to it: FG plans 13 trillion naira loan as Tinubu presents 49.7 trillion naira 2025 budget. You find that story on page 7. Oh no, page 2 of the Punch newspaper this morning. Beside it, gridlock grounds Lagos Ibadan Expressway as driver dies in crash. Gridlock grounds Lagos Ibadan Expressway as driver dies in crash. Page 4 and page 5 is where that story is. May God grant the family of the driver the fortitude to bear that loss, and may his gentle soul rest in peace. Underneath it, 18 Edo local government chairman fault suspension. Okpebolo orders probe. You find that story on page 29 of the Punch newspaper this morning, in case you want to get all of the details of why the 18 local government chairmen were suspended. What were the reasons? What's the probe going to be about? Well, the Punch has all of the details for you this morning. Saraki Plateau Governor, North Central bigwigs demand PDP chairman slot. Saraki Plateau Governor, North Central bigwigs demand PDP chairman slot. That story you see on page 29 as the PDP crisis continues to linger. They are meant to be the opposition, but if your house is not yet in order, how then can the people trust you to put the country in order? Well, let's see how it goes. Above the nameplates this morning, AGF to meet Senate panel on tax reform bills today. AGF to meet Senate panel on tax reform bills today. That story you'll find right here on page 29 of the Punch newspaper this morning. Beside it, PSC promotes over 8,000 police officers. PSC promotes over 8,000 police officers. You find that story on page 26 of the Punch newspaper this morning. And finally, on the Punch newspaper this morning, which might get to be the topic we get to talk about for the remainder of the show, cash scarcity. OPS faults CBN's limit on POS withdrawals. Cash scarcity. OPS faults CBN limit on POS withdrawals. You find that story on page 21 of the papers this morning, and that's the much for the Punch for today. From the Punch straight to the Vanguard newspaper. The Vanguard leads with this one: Nigeria-Ghana elections compared. 7 reasons beavers may never work in Nigeria. That's according to investigation. I take that one more time. 7 reasons beavers may never work in Nigeria. That is an investigation. You find that story on page 4. It has a couple of writers to it. How Afari-Gyan, chairman of Ghana's Electoral Commission, served with integrity from 1993 to 2015. Nigeria owes him a lot. Professor Jega. Presidents disregard constitution in appointing INEC chairman commissioners. The legacy President Tinubu can bequeath to Nigerians. So you need to look at this story on the Vanguard News this morning, it is an investigation. It is a comparison between the Nigerian and the Ghana elections. So in case you want to find out all of those details, well, you need to go get the Vanguard this morning for you to have all of it. Also on the front page of the Vanguard, like every other paper, President Tinubu presenting the 2025 budget to the National Assembly, and it has a big rider to it on page 3 of the Vanguard this morning. It says 2025 Tinubu seeks 34.82 trillion naira revenue to fund 49.7 trillion naira budget. That story is on page 3 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Beside it, Council Chairman fault suspension by Edo House of Assembly. Page 12 is where that story is. FG plans to improve power. I take that one more time. FG plans to improve power with $750 million World Bank loan. FG plans to improve power supply with $750 million World Bank loan. You'll find that story on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. I think this story, I'm not certain now, but we also hear the Minister of Power yesterday in a rural electrification panel in Abuja, while he was talking about a $700 million AFDB back loan, which is planning to use for renewable power resources, which will be focused on the northern part of Nigeria, so as to harness all of the sunlight they have right there and using it empowering communities, so as to make sure we invest more in agriculture, we invest more in education. It's a beautiful, beautiful one if this is done to the latter. That is, if all of the $700 million getting from the AFDP is invested into it, then it is a beautiful one, and it will definitely add to the power source of the country. Imagine if the northern region has a whole lot of power supply in terms of harnessing the sunlight, which is so much there, and the deserts are being used. I think what it's tagged Desert to Power project, which is that is for the $700 million backed by the African Development Bank. I think this one is another $750 million World Bank loan for power supply. So if this one works out, and that one also works out, it means improved power supply in the country. That is, I keep saying it, if it is utilized to its full amount. That is, if they do it sincerely, if there's real political will to make sure that these things work. Once you put this kind of money into structures, there's no how there won't be improvement. $700 million is no change. $750 million is no change. It's not little money. There's no how you put this into the power supply. You put this into getting good power supply, that we won't see an improvement in power supply, or else there is some sort of, how do we call it in our local parlance, some sort of mago in the middle. That is the only way a $700 million or a $750 million investment into power supply won't work. Only if there's mago in the middle. If you really invested in power supply, believe me, there will be great improvement. And with the minister Adelabu, the Minister of Power, saying the particular Desert to Power projects for the AF, which is going to be backed by the AFDB loan, will power as much as 80 million homes, 80 million Nigerians, I beg your pardon. That's huge numbers. Imagine if the Desert to Power project covers 80 million people already. That's close to half of our population. We're over 200 million. So 80 million, it's close to half of our population. That is huge. That is very, very huge. It means those ones won't have to be on the national grid. It means the national grid will have enough power to supply to other communities which do not have power. So it is huge. It is huge. It needs to be utilized. That is what will make it work properly. So we move on. Above the nameplate of the Vanguard newspaper this morning, We agreed on sale of 20% stake at $2.76 billion. That is according to the Dangote refinery. This has to do with the claim by the NNPCL of the $1 billion loan which it used to help Dangote when allegedly it was about to liquidate. Beside it, tax reforms. Those who don't understand bills are loudest critics. Akpabio. You see that story on page 9. Beside it, many children feared. I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. Many children feared dead during stampede at Ibadan Carnival. Many children feared dead during stampede at Ibadan Carnival. You find the story on page 7 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. And finally, on the Vanguard newspaper, Nigeria's $42 billion external reserves can finance 9-month imports. CBN. Nigeria's $42 billion external reserves can finance 9-month imports. That is according to the CBN, and you find that story on page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. That's the much that we have right here on the Vanguard for today. Okay, now we have looked at the papers. We still have a few more minutes for you to, reach out in case you want to, give your own insight about things that made the front page of the papers, or basically want to talk about anything concerning what is happening in the country today. Now is the time for you to do so, and the number for you to call us is 0700 1021 1021, or you can WhatsApp or text message us on 0907 224 5018. And we saw on the papers this morning where there's been a limit to POS withdrawals for customers. I think 100,000 naira is what it is now, and POS operators are not supposed to do transactions more than 1.2 million per day. And this is coming as a result of there's an idea that that is where most of the cash is stocked up at, and you get to notice that there's huge cash scarcity in Nigeria at the moment. You go to the banks, less cash is given. There was a report by one of the papers yesterday where allegedly only 20,000 naira is being given to customers. And you realize some of these things and you get to wonder what exactly is the problem. And this has been something that came into the limelight and has been plaguing us since the change of the Naira notes by the then led CBN Emefiele led CBN team under the Buhari administration. And ever since then, it has been like our cash has magically disappeared. It has been like we do not see cash anymore. Although we get to see minted notes in parties being sprayed, we get to see so many of all this money, being sprayed, and you wonder, where do these ones get this money from? How come everyday Nigerians do not get to see this money? With some alleging that it is the POS operators who have access to most of the cash, and some, Nigerians, trying to, defend the POS operators, saying how many of these POS operators actually have the capacity to actually get most of the cash from banks, because you need to be influential to say you have. This is Nigeria, for goodness sake. Not just anybody can walk to the bank and say, hey, give me your cash. You don't have to put it in the bank. Only influential people can get to do that, the way Nigeria works. So how many of these POS operators actually have the capacity to make sure that cash doesn't exist in the economy? Yeah, I do understand some of them might withhold cash because, yes, maybe they want to use it for their business. But how much cash? Let's be honest. I think if we do a huge survey of the POS operators you have around you, I doubt most of them have up to $1 million in their account at which they use in running their business. Some of them has as low as 200,000 to 300,000 as total amount at which they use in running their business. If those are the amounts they have at hand, and how then can they, be in charge of all of the cash that exists? I think the CBN needs to do more. I think the banks needs to do more. There needs to be more check. There needs to be more check to find out, because we know that the CBN has a certain amount of cash which it prints and imputes into the system. What investigation has been put in place to know where those amount of cash went to? There is system. They know the banks at which they sent each particular cash to. They understand all of these things. So what has been done by the CBN to make sure that everyday Nigerians do not suffer these cash issues? How many banks will you go to today and you walk up to their ATMs and you get to see cash coming out of their ATMs? And even if you get to see cash coming out of their ATMs, how many banks have ATMs in communities, in vicinities where people actually live? You'll notice most of the banks are not in community areas. They are in commercial areas. So, they're not in residential areas. So what of those residential areas? Then how then do they get access to cash? So more needs to be done. If we want to have a society where the cashless economy works and the cash also works, there needs to be a balance to those two things. It's not all about, trying to, gag the POS operators, because at the end of the day, it still affects the everyday Nigerians. 100,000 naira, if you say that's only what they have to withdraw, well, yes, it's okay. It's all good. But do most of the everyday Nigerians who do the businesses in the markets, who always use cash, will 100,000 actually work for them in their small businesses? Will 100,000 cash actually help them do their business effectively? It is hard. Yes, it means they will have to go maybe cashless or do the electronic transfer of money. But are they financially okay for all of the charges that they will occur when they do this electronic means of sending money? So many of all these things need to be put in consideration. There needs to be a balance that works for the people, that works for the economy, and works for the CBN. That's how we call it an end on today's edition of the newspaper review right here on our Impact Radio 102.1 FM. We will be back tomorrow for the Friday edition. Yes, which happens to be the last edition of the paper review. But hey, on Saturday, there will be the Big Five, where you get to hear stories, 5 major stories that took place during this week. But before all of that, I will be here again tomorrow to give you all of you need in terms of what the papers has to say. Until then, my name remains Uche Okorve. Have yourself a beautiful, beautiful Thursday.
Welcome to High Impact Studios, the place where creativity meets production perfection. Need an outstanding audio production? We deliver professional jingles, engaging voiceovers, and attention-grabbing radio promos that stand out from the crowd.
If you're in the podcasting world, we've got the ideal recording space for you. Our studio is designed to ensure pristine sound, making it the perfect place to bring your podcast to life.
But we don't stop at audio. Looking for a space to film your next big project? High Impact Studios